This is Bilal Randeree, and I'm with Shawn Powers at the Aljazeera Forum. Shawn Powers is professor at Georgia State University. Could you just give us a brief intro to yourself?
Sure. I'm a professor at Georgia State University and the associate director of the Center on International Media Education. I've been studying Aljazeera English since 2007, when I co-authored a book with my colleague Mohammed Al-Nawawi on comparing Aljazeera English to other international news organizations in terms of how it shapes public opinion.
Okay, so since you've been studying Aljazeera for a while, I wanted to know whether you think our coverage slant has changed at all since 2007-2008 until December of last year.
Sure. Well, when Aljazeera first launched, it was just like any organization that launches a global endeavor. It was a bit of a new effort, and there were kinks to be worked out, as everyone here said at the time, and I think understood. And so, in terms of its growth, I think Aljazeera English has really come into its own and finally rediscovered its original mission of giving a voice to the voiceless, beaming news from the Middle East to the rest of the world, and providing a counter representation of the news from the global south, so to speak. So that's always been the mission of Aljazeera English, but I think that the organization has done a much better job of fulfilling that mission, particularly in the last year, the last 12 months.
And focusing on Al Jazeera's coverage of issues within the Gulf, I know we've been really recognized for coverage of uprisings in Tunisia, Egypt, and in Libya. And there have been some who have criticized us for perhaps not doing the same level or justice to the Gulf in that sense. What's your view on that?
I think those criticisms are just. I think that it's a bit peculiar that we see a lot more about protests in Libya, Tunisia, and Egypt, like you've mentioned, but not nearly as much about the protests in Bahrain, which today in particular got really ugly. But that's not necessarily an overwhelming criticism. Every news organization has to be cognizant of its need to keep allies and be cognizant of the politics of their journalism in the region. And the tragic news about the cameraman that Al Jazeera lost last night in Libya, in my mind, reminds everyone of the need to be cognizant of the restraints and constraints on journalists. And so we could all say you should be everywhere at all times, covering everything at all times, but the reality is it's a tough time in this world. So sure, we would love to hear more from the Gulf states, but that's not to say we're not very appreciative of all the hard work that Al Jazeera has been doing in the region, particularly in the last few weeks.
Thanks so much for your time. This interview hopefully will go up on our website. It's aljazeera.net/English, as I'm sure you know. Thanks so much.
Thank you.